We are sharing it.
非常有
Can you see it?
国际都是经验的人在这个这个语境这么把我都是很懂的。
You want them here? आजकल
现在呢，就想能够。
Dr. Rahman, can you see the PPT?
对外项目的。
Can you see PPT by Professor Tao?
question answer में भी वो करेंगे और they are all
question answer भी होगा।
question answer होगा।
好，我觉得可以。
We are sharing the PPT.
到时候把这个杂志给我一份，然后到时候我们把这个相关的信息。
没有，
我也等我也跟。
Okay, it's working. It's
实
working.
在太忙了，那个，哎，你现在这边有没有一带一路研究？
Yes, I can see it. Nice, very nice.
一会儿到办公室拿一个给那个是给李国处长看一看。这是我们换的，你拿看着是英文的，是中文还是
中文的？
中文的。
本来就想出中英文双语的，因为我很多稿子都是英文。
समझ में लाइट की दीजिए वो गरीब सी।
把最好的东西卡掉了，中文是吧？因为它
其实我们要出英文，
要出英文的最好。
出英文最好，出英文的我们在斯普林格出，斯普林格大牌出版社，在斯普林格出的。
लाइट का कोई प्रॉपर बंदोबस्त। हाँ, पता नहीं क्या इसको जल्दी लगी। इसको लगा। Shoes now.
ये आपको सर कैन यू हियर अस हम म्यूट तो नहीं है
जी
आवाज आ रही है आपको
जी सर
Yes, it's clear, very clear.
Okay, very good.
I think since we have all these speakers and we have the panel ready, I think we may go ahead and begin the proceedings of today's webinar.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir. So we formally begin the proceedings of today's webinar. Hello and welcome to IPRI. I'm Osama Zamani, and I will be moderating the webinar today. Today we are holding a webinar on 70 years of Pakistan-China friendship, navigating the future. We have an esteemed panel that will discuss on various themes of the subject. After the discussion and towards the close of the event, the floor will be open for question and answer session. Also among our list of distinguished speakers, we will be hearing from Ambassador Enamel Huck, who will speak on the Pakistan-China relationship, the areas of bilateral military economic convergence. Ambassador Enamel Huck has served as the Foreign Secretary at Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He has also served as the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs in 2002. Among many distinguished positions he has held to his credit as career diplomat, he was also Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations. At present, he is also Chairman, Board of Governors, IPRI. The second presentation will be delivered by Professor Tao Yi Tao, who will be speaking on Pakistan-China economic cooperation, the role of CPEC in the regional connectivity and geo-economics. Dr. Yi Tao is a professor and a PhD supervisor in economics at Shenzhen University. She is also director of the China Center for Special Economic Zone Research and dean of the Belt and Road Institute at Shenzhen University, as well as the dean of the Belt and Road Research Institute for International Cooperation and Development. Among other titles to her credit, she is also the special allowance expert of the State Council and vice president of the Institute for History of Chinese Economic Thoughts and the Guangdong Economic Association. Our third speaker, unfortunately, Dr. Xu Xianying, due to official commitments, will not be joining us. We will also be hearing from Dr. Fazlur Rahman, who will be speaking on the future trajectory of Pakistan-China bilateral relations. Dr. Fazlur Rahman is serving at present as Director, Pakistan Institute of China Studies at University of Sargodha. Previously, he has served as the editor-in-chief of IPRI Journal. Given his personal and academic linkages with Chinese think tanks and universities, he's known for his insights on China. Before we commence our discussion, I would like to request Acting President IPRI, Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua, for his welcome address. Over to you, sir.
Thanks, Osama. Respected participants, especially National Security Advisor Dr. Moeed Youssef, Chairman of Board of Governors, IPRI, Ambassador Enamel Huck, Dr. Fazal, Dr. Tao Yitao, and other participants. I extend a very warm welcome on behalf of Islamabad Policy Research Institute on this very important webinar on China-Pakistan relations and CPEC and its geo-economic significance. China is a very important country for Pakistan, and our friendship extends back to 1950, when Pakistan was amongst the first 3 non-communist countries who recognized China. So ever since then, this has been a very long and abiding relationship which has stood the tests of time. And these ties, which include economic, political, and cultural ties, have been very sedulously nurtured. The first manifestation infrastructure-wise was the famed Karakoram highway, which commenced in 1966 and which was a window for China towards Pakistan and from there onwards to the world. This was a humble initiative which started with Chinese help, and a small force from Pakistan was airlifted to Hotia in Chinese Xinjiang province. From there onwards, that force was given the equipment, transport, and uniforms, and a common border was demarcated at Khunjarab Pass. The rest is all history. And now the same Karakoram highway, which in many ways was the precursor to China-Pakistan economic corridor, has developed into an all-weather Class 70 highway, which takes the goods, transport, and tourists. In the realm of defense and diplomatic cooperation, Pakistan-China's relations go very deep. Pakistan was one of the important countries that, through active United States help, opened up new windows for China. And we know that famous diplomatic shuttle of Henry Kissinger to Beijing to meet Chinese leadership, and that was actively supported by Pakistan. Pakistan and China have been all-weather friends. And in defense cooperation also, once Pakistan felt isolated after the 1965 war, it was the Chinese defense cooperation that helped us create a robust defense infrastructure. The current manifestation is the main battle tank, VT-4, which is a state-of-the-art weapon platform, and which has been acquired from China. And we are also cooperating in other fields like vehicle mobility and UCAVs. So this cooperation is quite vital for both countries. On cultural planes, there is a similarity of cultures between Pakistan and China, especially the Xinjiang province, and there is a large Muslim majority in China also, which Pakistan and Chinese community shares common bonds. Other than that, Pakistan and China have started China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is an exemplar of a new paradigm of geo-economics that is unfolding right in front of us. And China is an example worth emulating because it has lifted nearly 800 million out of poverty. And it has reduced its poverty index from 66.3% to 0.3%, which is a phenomenal undertaking and an example worth emulating by the rest of the world. China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which had two major components. One was the infrastructure development, and second was the industrial cooperation and development of special economic zones, is proceeding very smoothly, and Pakistan is quite enthused, and we are, cooperating with a lot of alacrity. With Chinese, the first phase has gone very well. There's a network of roads and major highways which has linked our Balochistan Gwadar port with our northern areas. And there are other infrastructure projects like ML1, which is a major railway connectivity project. Once that comes through, that would usher in a new revolution in communications between the two countries. China is a worthy country to emulate in terms of its industrial productivity and its phenomenal economic progress. And in many ways, Pakistan is ready to cooperate and emulate the Chinese example. The present trade turnover of 17.49 billion is expected to grow phenomenally. According to a Global Times report, if we keep progressing, within 8 years, Pakistan and Chinese trade has the potential to overtake the trade between India and China. For that, both countries are making rapid strides, and I'm sure the future of trade and economic cooperation is quite bright in view of China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Now, with these preliminaries, we come to the proceedings of webinar, and it would be very educative to listen to the experts. And I'm sure at the end of the seminar, after Q&A sessions, we'll stand much wiser on some of the dimensions of geo-economics and the relationship between China and Pakistan as it unfolds in future. So we'll start the proceeding with the televised address of National Security Advisor, Dr. Youssef. And for that, I hand the proceedings over to Mr. Osama Zamani. So over to you, Osama.
Thank you very much, sir, for your welcome address. And before we commence our discussion, we're pleased to share Dr. Youssef, National Security Advisor's keynote speech on today's event. And looking towards the future, what does the bilateral partnership mean for the two sides?
First of all, I think both nations, the people of both nations must be congratulated on 70 years of this relationship, which has no parallel. For Pakistanis, not only the Pakistani government and state, but the people of Pakistan, this is truly an iron brother friendship, truly, as we say, an all-weather friendship, because at the end of the day, both sides have stuck together. Both sides have helped each other in the toughest of times. You know, we've had other fair weather friends. When things go well, people come and join hands, countries come and join hands, that's normal. The real test of any friendship is when the chips are down, how do you behave? And I must thank the People's Republic of China, and I know that their sentiments are the same about Pakistan, that we have been together through thick and thin, and we will continue to do that. In fact, our relationship has been so good and so special in all spheres that we are now seeing, unfortunately, a very concerted effort by our detractors, by our enemies, state and non-state, to try and undermine this relationship and the progress that we are making in terms of the China-Pakistan economic corridor and beyond that. We are seeing very unfortunate plans, policies, strategies to target infrastructure and even people who are associated with this relationship are citizens of either China or Pakistan. I want to be as clear as I can be. I want to assure everybody that this kind of activity will not be allowed to undermine any part of this relationship. Pakistan stands by China, and I know the opposite is also true, and anybody and everybody who tries to hurt this relationship will be defeated. The entire machinery, state machinery of Pakistan will be looking at this and making sure, as I'm sure China is, to make sure that this relationship continues to prosper and goes from strength to strength. The China-Pakistan economic corridor is a flagship, has already helped Pakistan in multiple ways economically, and there is much more to come. China and Pakistan also are partners in the regional context. Given where Afghanistan is going, we are looking forward to working together to ensure peace and stability in Afghanistan and on global issues in international fora. As I said, there is no parallel to this relationship. We are going from strength to strength, and inshallah, for both countries, this will be a relationship in the future as well that the world will see and envy and will not be able to dent in any possible way. Long live Pakistan-China friendship.
On this note, I will now request our first speaker, Ambassador Enamel Huck, for his views on the subject.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Distinguished participants, as you already know, we are meeting today as a part of the ongoing celebrations in Pakistan and in China to commemorate the 70 years of the establishment of diplomatic relations between our two countries. This particular webinar, being held by the Islamabad Policy Research Institute, is dedicated to examine areas of bilateral, military, and economic convergence between our two countries. Let's start with some history. Pakistan's close, cordial, and fraternal relations with China were established long before China emerged as a major economic and military power of the world. The solid foundation of our time-tested and all-weather friendship was laid during the period of the first generation of Chinese leadership and has continued to prosper and grow with each new generation of leadership on both sides. This relationship has always been based on respect, trust, and confidence between the people of the two countries and their leaders. This relationship has withstood the vicissitudes of time as well as regional and international developments. The two countries hold candid discussions on all bilateral, regional, and international issues and have developed a convergence of views and close cooperation on all issues of mutual interest. With the passage of time, the relations have grown stronger in the political, diplomatic, military, economic, commercial, and cultural fields, and it has risen to the level of a comprehensive strategic partnership. Pakistan and China stand as a shining example of solidarity and mutual support in an uncertain and turbulent regional and international situation. The two countries have consistently stood by each other. Together, they have borne with courage and with fortitude the difficult times that they have faced, and together they have celebrated the good that has come their way. The multifaceted cooperation between them is an example for the world to follow. A distinguishing feature of this relationship has been that this friendship is not aimed against any third country. The two countries have consistently worked together to promote regional and international peace, progress, and prosperity. The strategic relationship is designed to promote cooperation in the neighborhood as well as with global partners. The two countries base their policies on the time-honored principles of respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, non-interference, and peaceful coexistence. They expect other countries to follow the same principles as well. Pakistan-China relationship is multidimensional, and there is close coordination between the two countries at all international forums, and bilateral cooperation flourishes in all areas of, in all fields of strategic, political, diplomatic, military, and other areas. In my remarks today, I will confine myself to a few words on the future direction of military cooperation between the two friends and partners, and on the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, which is the flagship project of the Belt and Road Initiative, the $1 trillion long-term infrastructure project to promote connectivity, globalization, and economic integration. China and Pakistan have been working closely together in the field of defense equipment. China has supplied Pakistan with submarines, frigates, patrol boats to the Pakistan Navy, tanks and other equipment to the Army, and aircraft to the Pakistan Air Force. As you have been told, BT-4, the latest tank, is based on Chinese technology. The joint production of JF Thunder 17 is moving apace, and the third generation of these aircraft is being produced jointly. The Ka trainer aircraft is also being produced jointly, and joint exercises are also held between the forces of the two countries. The time is now right to move further ahead. The two countries must coordinate their military planning, enter into intelligence sharing, mutual logistic support and communications, develop compatible command and control systems, and ensure greater integration of forces and equipment. The armed forces of the two countries must hold regular tri-service exercises to hone their interoperability, mutual understanding, trust, and fighting capabilities. In the area of defense production, which is a highly expensive area, we should raise the level of cooperation through joint research and development of new weapon systems, including autonomous weapon systems, robotics, next generation aircraft, hypersonic weapons, including hypersonic glide vehicles, and cruise missiles, to name only a few areas. However, we should be realistic as well. Given Pakistan's budgetary constraints, our defense doctrine should be a defensive-offensive doctrine, where surface-to-air missiles, surface-to-surface missiles, anti-tank weapons, and other low-tech weapons play an important role. This is in fact a doctrine which China had also followed in earlier decades to ensure its defense against any aggression against the mainland or any of its territories. Now a few words about CPEC. CPEC was formally launched in 2015, and the projects being undertaken under the rubric of CPEC include power plants, transmission lines, infrastructure, special economic zones, agriculture, telecommunications, optic fiber laying, railways, minerals, tourism, education and science and technology. The Chinese government and Chinese commercial enterprises have already invested more than $20 billion primarily in the energy and infrastructure projects. CPEC, if implemented in all its projected spheres, would inject an investment of another $40 to $50 billion in Pakistan's economy over the next 10 to 15 years. New infrastructure projects, economic zones, industries would be established, new jobs would be created, and production and exports of Pakistan would be enhanced. However, we must not forget that loans have to be repaid with interest, and that foreign investors, howsoever friendly, are animated by the desire to make profits on their investments. Unfortunately, Pakistan in the past has not used its borrowings very wisely, with the result that our indebtedness has continued to grow alarmingly, and debt servicing eats away a major percentage of our annual budget. We must therefore ensure that the projects undertaken under CPEC do not become a burden on our economy and provide sufficient returns to satisfy the lenders and investors, and also contribute to the development of Pakistan and the reduction of our debt burden. Unfortunately, some problems are being faced in the context of CPEC, which I will briefly mention and which need to be resolved rather urgently. According to some reports, payments to Chinese companies are not being made on time, and a large amount, almost amounting to 300 billion rupees, is pending for payment. This is creating cash flow and debt servicing problems for some Chinese companies. This issue needs to be addressed urgently by the government of Pakistan to ensure that Chinese investors are not discouraged from investing in Pakistan. Another issue of concern both to Pakistan and to China is attacks on Chinese nationals working in Pakistan, which is clearly the work of subversive agencies from abroad. The recent tragedy in Dasu and the attack in Karachi have aggravated these concerns. Pakistan is determined to ensure full security for the Chinese nationals working in Pakistan, because this issue has raised major concerns in China, and it is the duty of Pakistan to protect workers who come to help Pakistan's economy. There have also been negative comments by some sections of opinion in Pakistan, and this has led to a slowdown in the implementation of ongoing projects and delays in undertaking new projects. ML1 is one example where some delays are taking place. It should be a matter of concern that over the last year, according to reports, Chinese investments in CPEC related projects have dwindled down to $100 million only. We must ensure that our economic problems do not have a negative fallout on our strategic relationship. Despite the fact that CPEC is a purely economic project, it has attracted vociferous opposition from India and from the United States. Indian opposition to CPEC stems primarily from its adversarial relations with Pakistan. However, the opposition by the United States, which has engaged in a public campaign against CPEC in Pakistan and against the BRI internationally, is because of the growing rivalry between China and the United States. The list of allegations leveled by the United States against CPEC is long and includes allegations like lack of transparency, absence of accountability, non-competitive bidding, high costs of projects, limited local job creation, and declarations that Chinese loans and investments with sovereign guarantees are creating a debt trap for Pakistan. The United States has demanded that China should adopt Paris Club standards of lending, which include concessional loans and grants. The truth is that Western countries are more adept at exploitation of the developing countries and have been doing so for centuries now, and are primarily responsible for the low development in developing countries and for the heavy debts that many developing countries are trapped in. Distinguished participants, the American opposition to CPEC and the BRI has to be seen in the context of the all-embracing competition between the United States and China, which the American professor Graham Allison has referred to as the Thucydides trap. That is, the struggle for supremacy between an established power and a rising power, which is challenging the existing power structures. Such a competition could lead to conflict initiated deliberately or through an unintentional spark, which leads to a conflagration. This competition is brewing in the geostrategic, geopolitical, as well as geo-economic arenas. Because China is already the largest economy in the world in PPP terms and is expected to overtake the American economy in nominal dollar terms by the end of this decade. According to Western sources, the American GDP stands at about $22 billion in purchasing power parity terms, whereas the Chinese economy is already in excess of $26 trillion. I'm sorry, I said $22 billion, it's $22 trillion versus Chinese economy of $26 trillion in purchasing power parity. Distinguished participants, the world is moving towards greater turmoil and strife. The United States and China, the two premier powers of the world, are locked into competition. A new Cold War is already being waged by the United States against China. the US Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, has described the American policy towards China as being competitive where it should be, collaborative where it can be, and adversarial where it must be. And the other nations of the world are expected to array behind one or the other of the two mega powers. In our own region, United States and India have become strategic partners, and the United States looks upon India as a pivot in its Indo-Pacific strategy to counter and contain China. In Pakistan, we must understand that it would not be possible for Pakistan to supplant India in its relations with the United States. Pak-US relations have always been unequal and transactional. Being the most powerful nation in the world, the United States has always determined the nature and strength of its bilateral ties with Pakistan. Despite Pakistan's desire to maintain good relations with the United States, Pakistan will not be treated as an equal partner and will be expected to accept United States dictates whenever it so desires. Under the circumstances, despite our economic, commercial, and political links with the West and the United States, Pakistan must build even stronger ties with China through closer integration of the two economies, enhancing complementarities, accelerated completion of CPEC projects, increasing joint defense production, and holding regular and in-depth strategic conversations with China. Pakistan, like most other countries of the world, would not like to see another Cold War or a world divided into different blocs and camps. Let me conclude by saying that China, as a neighbor, has been a trustworthy and reliable friend. It has bailed Pakistan out financially when needed, has stood by Pakistan in its hour of need, has invested billions in the ongoing CPEC multi-pronged project, and has stood by Pakistan at the United Nations and other international organizations. It has provided defense equipment for the Pakistan Army, Navy, and the Air Force when no other countries was prepared to do so. Our relations with United States have always been determined, as I said earlier, by the demands on Pakistan. And the United States walks away whenever it feels that the relationship has served its purpose. Pakistan and other countries must do all they can to ensure that the relationship between the two most powerful countries of the world does not deteriorate into a confrontation. Finally, let us be clear-eyed. No policy choice is cost-free. An assessment of any situation has to be based in cold logic and on a cost-benefit analysis. Major powers are ruthless in their decision-making. Their perception of their own national objectives and national interests determines their policies, and they have no compunction in ditching and even destroying other countries to serve their own interest. We have witnessed this amply in the first 2 decades of the 21st century in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria, and elsewhere. As such, in the final analysis, each country has to protect itself and its interests and decide on its friends and allies. No other country can bail us out of trouble, whether economic or defense related. We have to do it ourselves. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Enamel Huck. I now will request Professor Tao Yi Tao to deliver her presentation.
Okay. Wait a minute. Let's share the PPT. Okay.
Your screen's on share now.
好，那个，巴士德先生，尊敬的巴士德先生、女士们、先生们，大家好！感谢伊斯兰堡政治领域院的邀请，能参加声音吗
Can you hear me? Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Can you see the PPT?
Yes, we can also see the presentation also on our screen.
Okay, good.
OK，尊敬的巴士德先生、女士们、先生们，大家好！感谢伊斯兰堡政治研究院的邀请，能参加今天的论坛是我的荣幸。今年呢是中巴建交70周年，70年来，虽然曾经历风风雨雨，但两个世界人口大国还是成为了让许多周边国家羡慕并且感到压力的铁杆兄弟。回顾中巴友谊的历史，1955年曼农会议期间，周恩来总理与穆罕默德·阿里·波格拉总理的2次会谈，对增进两国之间的相互了解和友谊合作关系的确立与发展起到了历史性的作用。1962年爆发的中印边境自卫反击战，1965年爆发的第2次印巴战争，都让中巴两国领导者和人民真正意识到，只有真诚的团结与彼此互信，才能获得惠及两国的共同和平与互利发展。之后呢，中巴友谊沿着正确而健康的道路，日益坚固地发展着。从1965年到1971年，巴基斯坦在联合国大会上都是作为提案国支持中华人民共和国在联合国的合法权益。1963年8月，中巴航空运输协议的签订，巴基斯坦成为第一个拥有从非共产主义国家飞往社会主义中国航班的国家。中国也因此有了一个对外联络的窗口，也正是利用了这个窗口，巴基斯坦作为中间人，以智慧促进了基辛格访华。之后，历经11年的周折，被称为中巴友谊之路的卡拉昆仑公路的全线建成通车，被称为欧亚大陆桥的中巴铁路的部分建成使用，中巴经济走廊所有成效的建设与运营，这一切都不仅仅述说着中巴友谊的美丽故事，而且颠覆了一句名言的内涵。这句名言就是19世纪英国首相帕麦斯顿所说的：“没有永远的朋友，没有永远的敌人，只有永远的利益。”事实上，在经济日益全球化的今天，财富的创造绝不是来自于国与国之间的此消彼长的厮杀，而是合作互利的共赢。在一个健康公平的国际分工链条当中，每个国家在实现着其自身发展繁荣的同时，也在为他国提供着需求，创造了供给，从而促进着他国经济的发展与繁荣。中巴两国就是相互成就的区域命运共同体，共同发展繁荣是我们共同的目标与愿望，所以共同创造惠及彼此的利益，而不是利益本身使我们成为了永远的朋友。由于中巴两国既在 地理上构成了相互依存的区域共同体，又在经济上处于不同的发展阶段，所以中巴经济具有很强的依存性、互补性与产业链条的传导性与传动性。巴基斯坦是一个发展中国家，尚属于不发达的市场经济体。巴基斯坦不缺资源，但缺乏的是开发这些资源的基础设施、资金、技术和安全的投资环境。目前，中国已经基本完成了工业化，正在向后工业化和信息化时代迈进，具有较多余的富裕的这个产能、资本和可以被直接拿来使用的成熟的技术。同时，经过改革开放42年的飞速发展，当前中国已经呈现产业区域间梯度转移的这样的趋势。这正如上个世纪70年代中国改革开放初期所面临的东南亚四小龙、劳动密集型产业梯度转移的状况是一样的。那中巴经济的依存性和互补性呢？主要体现在地缘因素决定的各自所拥有的要素禀赋之间的相互依存与互补性。中巴经济走廊对中国来说，既是一条可以摆脱他人约束制衡的能源生命线，又是一个广阔而多领域的投资平台。对于巴基斯坦来说，既可以有效地改善其基础设施滞后的局面，直接为当地民众提供大量的工作机会，提升其工业体系，又可以助力本国对外开放的扩大，整体加快摆脱经济贫困的步伐。但是，没有瓜达尔港的独特的地理位置，中巴经济走廊将在相当程度上失去它的价值。然而，只有瓜达尔港没有中国的资本和技术，中巴经济走廊也将失去其生命力。中巴经济的依存性与互补性，在中巴经济走廊中以地缘加资本与技术实力相结合的方式，完美的展示出来。那么，中巴经济的产业链条的传导性与传动性呢？它是源于经济发展的邻里效应、扩散效应和各个产业部门之间基于一定的技术经济关联，并依据特定的逻辑关系和时空布局关系客观形成的链条式关联关系这种形态，其中包含价值链、企业链、供给链和空间链4个维度的内在逻辑的组合。一方面，中国经济越强大，汇集周边区域的邻里效应和扩散效应就越强大。另一方面，巴基斯坦投资环境越好，这种邻里效应与扩散效应的承接度也就越强。如果巴基斯坦能够像42年前深圳成功的利用香港产业梯度转移过来的劳动密集型产业那样，充分利用好中国产业梯度转移过来的加工业，不仅可以大量解决就业问题，而且还可以凭借出口替代，加快本国的工业化进程，增加外汇收入，提高人民的生活水平。从中巴经济走廊的建设来看，中巴之间首先形成的是以物流为先导的产业链，继而随着中方投资和合作的加深，将会形成加工制造业和商贸等上下游的这样的产业链。当然，这一切还将带来巴基斯坦高水平服务业等第三产业的发展 和金融业的发展。中巴经济的这个产业链条的传导性和传动性，部分取决于产业业态的自身逻辑，但在相当程度上还取决于巴基斯坦投资环境的安全，能够遵循市场规律，有效配置稀缺资源的政府权威，更需要思想的解放和观念的革命。因为经济的发展从来都不仅仅是经济本身的问题，而是社会变革的结果。
I fear we happen to be confronting some technical glitches. Professor Tao, can you hear us? Professor Tao, unfortunately, we're not able to follow your presentation given the disruption in the internet connection on your end. I suppose I would request everyone to kindly bear with us for a short while. Professor Tao, can you hear us now? All right, so in the meanwhile, as we try and circumspect this issue, I will request Dr. Fazlur Rahman to kindly go ahead and deliver his presentation.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank IPRI for providing me with this opportunity to speak on this special occasion, on this webinar. Okay, I'll wait. I'll wait. Let them finish.
Professor Tao, we would request you to kindly continue your presentation from the very point where we started confronting the technical glitches. Thank you.
So, Mr. Where did you stop from this PPT? Which page should we start from?
I suppose it was the point concerning the value chain.
Comprehensive social
slide.
reform.
Okay, this one. Okay.
好，我从那个这开始。
The China-Pakistan economy, the conductivity and transmission of industrial chain. From this one.
Yes, I suppose you can perhaps skip a couple of presentations from here, and then we can begin.
Okay, I will send you. I will send you.
Thank you.
中巴经济产业链的传导性与传动性源于经济发展的邻里效应、扩散效应和各个产业部门之间基于一定技术经济关系，并根据特定的逻辑关系和时空布局关系客观形成的链条式关联关系形态。其中呢，包括价值链、企业链、供需链和空间链4个维度的内在逻辑这种组合。那么一方面，中国经济越强大，惠及周边地区的邻里效应和扩散效应越强大。那么另一方面，巴基斯坦投资环境越好，对这种邻里效应和扩散效应的承接度也就越强。如果巴基斯坦能像42年前深圳成功利用香港 产业梯度转移过来的劳动密集型产业那样，充分利用好中国产业梯度转移过来的加工业，不仅可以大量解决就业问题，而且还可以凭借出口替代，加快国内的工业化进程，增加外汇收入，提高人民的生活水平。从中巴经济走廊的建设来看，中巴之间首先形成的是以物流为先导的产业链，继而随着中方投资和合作的加深，将会形成加工制造业、商贸业等上下游的产业链。当然，这一切还会带来巴基斯坦高水平服务业等第三产业的发展和金融业的发展。中巴经济走廊，中巴经济这个产业链的传导性与传动性部分取决于产业业态它自身的逻辑，但在相当程度上还是取决于巴基斯坦的投资环境的安全，能够遵循市场规律，有效配置稀缺资源的政府的权威。更需要思想的解放和观念的革命，因为经济发展从来都不仅仅是经济本身的问题，而是一个社会变革的结果。中巴经济走廊应该成为巴基斯坦经济增长极，如同中国的深圳一样，不周边乃至幸福是共的。2017-2月2日巴基斯坦特区建设研讨会，我本人呢也就中巴经济走廊及巴基斯坦特区建设相关话题做了主旨演讲，并赴伊斯兰堡政治研究院和巴基斯坦国立科技大学签署了合作协议。之后呢，我有2次到访巴基斯坦，曾到访了位于白沙瓦的拉沙开经济特区考察，进一步加深了对巴基斯坦的了解，也加深了对巴基斯坦政府、国家智库和大学之间的友好往来，与巴基斯坦的同行一起为中巴发展分享智慧与思想，探索道路与路径，共同承担使命和责任。愿我们之间的合作与中巴友谊一样万古长青。后面是我们的一些照片。
These are the photos we taken in 2017 and 2018.
这个就是那个部长先生。
Yes, Minister Huck.
这是我们去拉沙开途中照的。
This is our field study in Russia Kai Special Economic Zone.
这是我
Taken
们
the
和
photo.
伊斯兰堡智库签约时的照片。
This is our photo when we signed the cooperation agreement with IPRI.
我们希望随着疫情的过去，我们的合作能够继续开展。
We will resume our programs of exchange scholars and other programs of cooperation after this pandemic.
我们将在适当的时候呢，邀请伊斯兰堡智库的学者到访我们学校。
We will invite scholars from IPRI to visit and to study in our university and our center.
谢谢各位倾听。
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Tao Yutao, for such a comprehensive presentation on the subject and for throwing so much light on the subject and the need for broadening cooperation between China and Pakistan, especially in the areas of special economic zones. On that note, now I will request Dr. Fazlur Rahman for his presentation. Over to you, sir.
I would like to thank IPRI for having me invited to participate in this webinar. There have been a lot of commemorative events held in Pakistan and in China, and we have been hearing personal experiences of presenters, people who have been part and parcel of developing this special relationship. The uniqueness of Pakistan-China relationship is known to all of us, and the areas in which the two countries have been cooperating are also known. Traditionally, there had been like 3 areas of cooperation. One was the defense-related cooperation, which started from the early 60s and is still continuing, and it has developed and matured in many ways, as Mr. Enamel Huck has pointed out in his presentation. Then there was political cooperation. The two countries have been taking a unanimous view of the regional global developments and try to calibrate their policies and forge friendly relationship in certain difficult situations and environment, and stood by each other. Then economic relationship and people-to-people relationship remained underdeveloped till recently, or we can say for the last 10-15 years, it has started to emerge and become more prominent. Especially the economic area has been quite underdeveloped, and we see that there is an incremental change in the situation, and we have signed a free trade agreement, and we have signed several framework agreements for promoting our bilateral economic relations. And now the situation is quite satisfactory, as has been mentioned by the acting president, that now it's $17 billion of trade between the two countries. But still, I think the balance of trade is heavily in favor of China. And the Chinese have been trying to address this issue and trying to help Pakistan to create an environment where we can export more to China. They have highlighted and identified areas where our exports could gain some market access. And at the same time, they have been sending some special missions to Pakistan, special buying missions, so that this problem can be addressed. So these traditional areas have been sort of continuing and going on. Then there is another area which started with the area of cooperation, which started with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, which was terrorism-related issues. China was affected with that terrorism-related issues also. So the two countries have been collaborating on that. So coming to the future trajectory of our bilateral cooperation, while we see that the progress and the development of the traditional areas will continue, and it will further consolidate and further strengthen. But the new areas are the areas of science and technology cooperation. It's the cooperation in agriculture sector, and it's the cooperation also in the education sector. We see that in the second phase of CPEC, actually much has been talked about CPEC as well, so I will not touch upon that. In the second phase of CPEC, these areas have been highlighted, and these have been given as priority areas. In Pakistan, there is a concerted effort by the current government to boost the construction industry, and China and Chinese companies are taking keen interest in developing infrastructure and coming into the construction sector of Pakistan's construction industry. So we'll see in future that the construction industry will also attract Chinese investment, and there will be several joint ventures in future. As far as the cooperation in science and technology is concerned, there has been a lot of cooperation already taking place. But now I think with the kind of special attention given to this area for developing information-based systems, so China is a leading country now in terms of export of high-level technology, and Pakistan still is a country which needs these high-level technological platforms to develop and add to its economic infrastructure and to its economy, especially in the areas of artificial intelligence, in the areas of industrial technology. So there is a lot that we can learn from China, we can have from China, but for that we have to have our own vision very clear. We need to make concerted, calibrated, and cohesive policies in order to absorb the Chinese investment, the Chinese technology, and the Chinese know-how, the best practices that we can adopt. Besides that, there are now the areas of the strategic cooperation, which keep changing according to the regional and the global situation. In the past, there had been primarily Afghanistan, terrorism, US policies towards South Asia, and relations with India. But now I think more precisely the current scenario is, as Enamel Sahib has mentioned, that the Cold War has, a new Cold War has already started, which means that we'll have to take positions. We'll have to, every country will have to take a position, either you are on this side or you are on that side. Basically, it will not be kind of a situation where you can play, sort of on both the ends. So Pakistan, of course, having excellent relations, cordial relations, strategic partnership with China, will try to promote further strategic cooperation with China in all spheres, be it the regional situation or the international situation. And especially now, Afghanistan is becoming very crucial for the security of both the countries. And it's going to be a huge responsibility of the neighboring countries of Afghanistan to see Afghanistan stabilizing in the coming days, while the Western countries have just shown a very lackluster response to what is going on now in Afghanistan. And we hope that a better sense would prevail between the Afghans themselves to find out a solution to their problems, and wherever they need help from the neighboring countries, I'm sure that the neighboring countries are willing to move forward in that direction. Terrorism again is surfacing. We have recently seen the 2 attacks on the CPEC related projects or the CPEC related interest. One is on the sort of one end of CPEC, the other is on the other end of CPEC. So that shows that the fallout effect of what is going on in Afghanistan, especially in the context of TTP and some other organizations, which will feel emboldened perhaps with the victory of Taliban in Afghanistan, will again surface and create problems which are certainly linked and sponsored by the outside powers. Besides terrorism, it's the US-India relations which is going to pose a challenge to Pakistan and China, how to deal with that, because now the chaos and the uncertainty is increasing in the region. And now the recent visit of the US Vice President Kamala Harris to Southeast Asia is also indicating that the tensions will increase in that region. So in such a situation, perhaps Pakistan and China need to develop more close strategic communication, which have been also emphasized by the Chinese leadership, that there should be more close strategic communication between the two countries. And I think the frequency of the leadership at all levels should increase and should be enhanced, so that the two countries can create a calibrated approach towards the emerging challenges and threats. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fazlur Rahman, for your presentation. Now we will move on to our question and answer session. I will now request people that are following this webinar today to send in their questions. I would also request them to kindly keep them brief, to the point, concise, and also add in as to who you would like to address this question to. Also, I would like to add in that Mr. William will be offering any answers on behalf of Professor Tao, either where he would feel the need to translate any opinion on behalf of Professor Tao, or any answers that he would find relevant to his area of interest. So with that beginning, I think we can go ahead and have some questions for the question and answer session. I would also welcome any of the panel members, Brigadier Rashidullah Janjua. If he has also any questions, he could go ahead and send them in. So let me take in any questions that I have.
Okay, Osama, thank you very much. So I have a question, a short question from Ambassador Enam. Sir, what would you comment on the prevailing Afghan situation and the role of China, Russia, and the regional countries into managing its fallout?
Thank you. Let me first of all note that this has nothing to do with today's webinar, but in any event, I will try to answer the question. The situation in Afghanistan is still evolving. The Taliban have just taken over Kabul. They have not even finalized the process of their consultations with other parties to form a government. As we know, evacuation on a large scale is taking place in Afghanistan, particularly of the United States and Western citizens, and those who had been working with the forces, foreign forces in Afghanistan. There are three countries which are immediately concerned with the situation in Afghanistan, four in fact: Russia, China, Iran, and Pakistan. And these countries have been also talking to each other about the future setup in Afghanistan and the future evolution of relations between this group of regional countries with Afghanistan. I think it's too early to say what shape the Afghan government will take. My view is that Pakistan should be circumspect in making detailed statements about what kind of government should emerge in Afghanistan. Because if the situation were reversed, Pakistan would not like any country to interfere in its internal affairs like the government that is functioning in Pakistan. And we should give the same independence to the Afghans to decide their own future. Let me also say that the Taliban and other Afghans are very good at negotiating with each other. And if we allow them sufficient time, I'm confident that they will come to some kind of an agreement which will bring in a government which will be acceptable to a vast majority of the Afghan people. At present, Russia, China, Iran, and Pakistan can only play the role of facilitators. They can help the Afghan people on humanitarian grounds. They can, if requested, suggest what kind of discussions should go on amongst the various Taliban parties. And Pakistan has been playing that part to the hilt in the sense that even opposition leaders have been welcomed in Pakistan in recent days to be heard and also to be involved in the future setup in Afghanistan. My feeling is that the United States and the West will continue to monitor this situation and to make sure that their influence is not totally eliminated from Afghanistan. Even today, there are news that The American intelligence agencies are thinking that a vacuum has been created in their intelligence gathering capacities because of their departure from Afghanistan. So we should watch the situation. We should keep consulting with the neighboring countries, particularly with China, to see that our policies are coordinated and we can jointly ensure that Afghanistan is peaceful, Afghanistan is stable, and Afghanistan becomes a part of the development process in the region. Afghanistan does occupy a central place in this region in the sense that all roads will lead through Afghanistan to Central Asia. And China, for example, is interested in investing in Afghanistan when Afghanistan is at peace. China has a contract of almost $3.5 billion for ionic mines in Afghanistan, but it has not started work on that because of instability in that country. So the first essential element is to reestablish stability in Afghanistan so that the neighboring countries can help Afghanistan and its people to develop and prosper.
Thank you.
All right, Dr. Fazl, I have one question for you, which we've had on Twitter, and this one is has been asked by Ali. The question is this, that given in the recent days, we've had the threat of terrorism, especially to Chinese nationals and also to Pakistani nationals working on CPEC-related projects. What, in your opinion, do you think can the two countries do in order to jointly address the menace of terrorism faced by the nationals of the two countries working on BRI?
Well, I think that...
Sorry, Dr. Fazlur. Sorry. Gigi, please continue, Doctor.
Thank you. I think that the frameworks already exist between the two countries for cooperation and supporting each other on this issue of terrorism, dealing with it. So I think that all we need to do is to enhance our efforts to defy and to preempt these kind of efforts. Actually, there are like hundreds of attempts which have been preempted, which have been defied by our security agencies, but they have not been mentioned. I think there should be some statistical picture given by the government that how many attempts have been foiled by the agencies. But somehow this issue is a very complicated issue. And sometimes wherever we find that we are lowering our guards, the terrorists strike. I think the best option for us is that we have, created certain mechanisms. There is one division of CPEC security force. I think we need to depute and employ that more effectively because some of these attacks seems to be happening because of the some kind of loopholes they have found in the security operators or in the situation. So I think that we need to. This is our responsibility. They are on our soil. They are our guests, and we need to take care of them, and we need to provide them with foolproof security. Of course, the intelligence sharing between the two countries is also very important, which is already taking place. But I think that primarily it's our responsibility, and we have to really look into it and enhance the security of the Chinese friends in Pakistan.
Dr. Fazlur Rahman, thank you for your answer. I would like to ask a question to Professor Tao or Mr. Williams, whoever thinks that they would be in the position to answer this question. We've usually seen Gwadar being stressed as a location for geostrategic significance, especially by international media. So I would like to ask you, how much do the Chinese partners envisage or see it more of as an economic pivot and as an economic melting point for the international trading and investment community? So I would like to go ahead and ask our colleagues in China to kindly answer this question.
他的问题是，那个一般来说，新媒是把瓜达尔当做中国的一个战略的一个
地缘战略
的，就是从政治方面、地缘政治方面来考虑它的价值。现在他就问您的是，你怎么从经济方面，从它的贸易发展呢，还有就投资方面来评价瓜达尔的功能。
OK，
慢点说，我来翻译。
瓜达尔港，无论对巴基斯坦或对中国来讲，它不仅具有很重要的战略地理位置，而且它的经济价值是会日益凸显出来的。
Professor Tao believes that Guadalajara to China and Pakistan not only has its geopolitical significance, and more we will see it will show its economic and social-economic progressive significance.
我们知道现在世界能源的大多80%的转口贸易都在马六甲。
Now the 80% of the world energy trade has to pass Malacca Strait.
随着瓜达尔港的建设呢，将这80%的能源运输量将有一大半会转到瓜达尔港。
After the finish of Guadalajara infrastructure and this port function, Professor believes that more than 50% of those go through the Malacca Strait will transfer to Guadalajara.
瓜达尔港所处的特殊的地缘位置，它不仅能够成为世界能源重要的一个枢纽，还会成为连接中国、非洲、西亚等一些国家的一个贸易枢纽。
Because of this peculiar and special location, geolocation of Guadalajara, this can be a key, the center place, or we can pivot port for the energy trade, connecting China and Western Asia and Africa and Southeast Asia.
我认为随着中巴经济走廊的建设和瓜达尔自身的逐渐的完善，瓜达尔港将有望在不久的将来成为世界能够首屈一指，或者说能在世界发挥重要位置的一个转口贸易港。
With the progress of CPEC and Guadalajara construction, Professor believes that in before long, the Guadalajara can be a first-class goods transfer port in the world.
随着这个瓜达尔港的日渐发展，它不仅完成转口贸易，同时呢，它的城市建设也将随着转口贸易的发展一同发展起来。
With the development of the foreign trade through this port, the suburban and the nearby area of Guadalajara, its urban construction and other like business can be also developed.
瓜达尔港，我认为它有望成为巴基斯坦最先走向国。
Mr. William, I fear we still.
Use this problem, Usama?
Yes, unfortunately, we were not.
It's okay.
Yes, but the video and the audio keeps breaking up.
Okay, how about now?
It's better now.
It's good now?
Oh, yes.
It's good now? Okay, let's continue.
继续。它将成为巴基斯坦的一个最重要的经济增长极。
And Professor believes that Guadalajara will be one of the most important economic generators in Pakistan.
可能相关联的数字经济、数字货币和这个现代金融业的发展，都会随着 瓜达尔港
Mr. William, unfortunately, we're still
Actually,
confronting the technical issue.
还是听不太清，
Okay, okay.
可惜了这么精彩的回答。
So there, can you hear us now?
Yes, but it keeps breaking up.
Okay. Should we repeat the answer?
it's okay.
I think if you could conclude the answer, and then we could move on to our next question, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah. Let me ask Professor Tao to give one or two sentence conclusion, then we go move forward. Okay?
Please.
你稍微总结一下，然后那个我们再往下推。
瓜达尔港呢将成为巴基斯坦最重要的经济增长极。
Professor believes that Gwadar Port will become one of the most important economic generator in Pakistan.
也将成为巴基斯坦最先整。
Mr. William, I fear we've lost you once again.
随着转口贸易的逐渐扩大，像数字经济、现代金融都会在瓜达尔港最先产生。
She believes that with the expansion of import and export, the digital economy and digital finance will be created first in Gwadar, in Pakistan.
有出问题吗？最后我想说一句：面对恐怖袭击，任何国家都不能够以宽容来获得安全，必须以武力来对抗这个应该讲暴力。
Okay, the final words of Professor Tao is that to the terrorist actions or attacks, we must keep zero tolerance to those terrorism and use tight force to control it and to diminish it.
一个安全的巴基斯坦是巴基斯坦发展的前提。
The prerequisite condition for the progress of Pakistan is security. So we must keep first security of Pakistan, then we can welcome the more investment and progress.
巴基斯坦安全，中国就会安全。
Only if Pakistan is secure and China can be secure.
中国经济发展，中巴经济走廊就能发展。
That's a precondition for the progress of CPEC and both China and Pakistan.
所以，安全和经济发展是中巴两国人民的共同愿望。
So the security and the economic progress, social economic progress, are the shared orientation of both Chinese and Pakistan people.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Professor Tao and Mr. William, I'm presuming you may have concluded your answer.
Yeah, they have. Please go ahead with next question.
听了。
Sure. I have another question.
Yes,
and-
please.
他在提，这都在提。
All right, so I have the next question. I would like to ask this question to Dr. Fazl. I would have preferred asking this question to Mr. Villian, but unfortunately, given the technical glitches we are facing, I'll come back to them with the next question. But I'd like to go ahead and ask Dr. Fazl Rahman. Traditionally, we've seen mostly students relying on Western education systems in order to enhance their higher education pursuits. I wanted to ask you, how can Pakistan and China enhance their cooperation, especially in areas of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and also social sciences such as the research on history, how do you think can the two countries go ahead and enhance cooperation in these areas?
I think that, I'll be very candid on that. There are now around 30,000 students studying in China. They are basically on Chinese government scholarships, and many of them are on self-finance basis. There are students who have got admission in medical sciences and engineering sciences, especially on the self-finance basis, and they have gone to the lower-ranking Chinese universities. So when they come back, perhaps they will not be really, as qualified as the students from the high-ranking, good-ranking, even Pakistani universities. So there is a problem even in China. There is a thinking that they would like to have the best Pakistani students so that they can, especially on the scholarship program. So far, there is no mechanism developed to create a criteria like a standard examination for qualifying students who could avail the Chinese scholarship. So anybody who applies, or through some connections or whatever, many of them get admission into the Chinese universities and get the scholarships also. But the thing is that now the Chinese have started, looking into this problem, and they have proposed to create a institute of higher education for Pakistan and China. And that institute is going to work in close collaboration with higher education in Pakistan. And they will develop certain kind of criteria to get the best students from Pakistan, so that when they come back, they can, contribute according to their skills in our system. Now, the Western countries have stopped accepting Pakistani students, especially in the sensitive technology, especially after our, nuclear, exploits in in the past, and especially after 9/11. So there had been kind of a shutting of doors on Pakistani students for high-tech technological areas in the West. And China is open to that area for Pakistan. So it's an opportunity for the Pakistani students that they can enter into Chinese institutions. And now, under the CPEC, there is a consortium of Chinese and Pakistani universities also. And the Chinese and Pakistani universities are collaborating in terms of joint research, accepting students from each other's universities, and trying to look into the possibilities of enhancing educational cooperation between the two countries. So a lot is happening, and perhaps we will see the results after a couple of years, that there is going to be a huge education sector cooperation between the two countries.
Thank you, Dr. Fazlur Rahman. Ambassador Enamel Huck, we have one more question, and I would like to request you if you could kindly enlighten us on that. And the question is from Wasim Baloch, and he has asked this question over Twitter. He has said that a lot of the discussion in terms of cooperation between Pakistan and China mostly centers on industrialization and cooperation in areas of agriculture. So he says there's still plenty of space and potential for cooperation in area of tourism. How do you see the two sides expand cooperation in that area, in that vertical, especially in the post-pandemic world? How do you think the two sides can go ahead and have more institutional mechanisms to better enhance cooperation in the area of tourism? Over to you, sir.
I think there is great scope for cooperation in tourism between Pakistan and China. The tourism industry in China is very highly developed as compared to Pakistan, and certainly Pakistan can benefit from their experience and advice. And also, the fact is that now we are opening up our country, and particularly the northern areas, to international tourism as well. As I'm sure the questioner is aware, an international airport is being established in Skardu so that international flights can land directly in Skardu and visit our northern areas. We have, in fact, the most beautiful spots for tourism in the world, particularly in the area of mountaineering. And there are huge prospects for tourism in Pakistan, in the north, as well as in the south. But the fact is that we have not been able to develop this industry or the infrastructure for this industry so far. And if Pakistan and China can cooperate together in this area as well, I'm sure that tourism will prosper greatly in Pakistan. And I'm sure that many Chinese tourists would also like to visit Pakistan, particularly the sites of Taxila and other areas around the KP areas where old Buddhist civilization prospered for a long while and where Chinese scholars and tourists used to come in the past. And I'm sure that if we develop the infrastructure, we can attract tourism not only from China, but also from all over of Southeast Asia and Japan, and also from the West. So there is ample room for cooperation in this area, provided we pay sufficient attention to it. Unfortunately, so far, I do not see any move towards paying enough attention. In fact, one organization, PTDC, which used to try to develop tourism, has been closed by us. They have very good arrangements and rest houses in tourist spots in Pakistan, which are now closed and where we are still paying the salaries to the staff. I would suggest that we reopen them so that tourists coming to Pakistan can stay there and bring some revenue to Pakistan as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Enamel Huck. Now, before we go ahead and conclude today's discussion, I would go ahead and ask my Chinese colleagues in Shenzhen, especially Professor Tao and Mr. William, to take the last question. And this question is this, that during your presentation, you referred to the need to introduce comprehensive social reforms. Could you please go ahead and elaborate on the concept? What is actually implied by, the concept of comprehensive social reforms?
他的意思是这样的，根据您的那个在PPT 里面展示的，让您继续的深入的解释一下的那个经济特区和这个社会变革之间的一个关系。我问一下，Osama, let me ask first. Can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can certainly hear you loud and clear.
是这个意思。
不是，我问他的是不是言路怎么样，线路怎么样？
可能问具体的社会变革指的是哪些变革？
这是一个非常好的问题。
That's a good question.
建立经济特区，它经济特区本身不是一个工具，不是一个经济发展的工具，也不是说深圳经济特区、中国经济特区成功，不意味着所有经济特区都能带来一个国家经济的发展和成功。
Special economic zone is just a tool, and the success of Shenzhen special economic zone does not mean that all the countries special economic zone can be successful.
比如就拿深圳吧，深圳经济特区，它在发展经济的同时，它出台一系列的优惠政策和社会管理规则，政府要革命，政府管理机制要改变，要创造好的营商环境。
For example, like Shenzhen, the city, when Shenzhen takes reform and the city municipal government make a set of new policies, the first issue is that the mind of the leaders and the system of the government has to have a new idea, has to reform themselves, then apply to the policies to the society.
比如深圳政府，它要从权力政府走向服务政府。
For example, the functional type of the Shenzhen government has been transformed from an authoritarian government, which based on the power, then to the service government, whose function is to serve for the people.
他要为所有的投资者创造便捷的投资环境。
The function of the government is to provide all the investors a convenient and good environment for to encourage their investment.
比如40年前在深圳，注册一个企业，从注册到企业运营需要1个月的时间。40年后的今天是秒批，在网上直接一点就批了。
For example, 40 years before, if you want to register a corporation, you have to take 1 month time to register in different bureaus of the government. But now, currently, you just need to take 1 hour or half an hour to do it online. It's very convenient in Shenzhen.
再比如40年前，一个企业要得到符合政府资助的标准，他每年要填报很多表格来获取政府的资助，高新技术产业企业。那么现在呢，只要符合政府的条件，年底在网上申报，1个星期，它的补助自动就会到企业账户。
For another example is that 40 years before, the high-tech company in Shenzhen, if it want to have the subsidy from the government, it has to fill a lot of forms to take months to do application work. But now it just has to use maybe 1 week to fill the online form, then can be automatically get the subsidy money.
整个经济特区发展40年的过程当中，实际深圳的成功不是资源和资本，不是简单的资源和资本的成功。
In the 40 years reform of Shenzhen, the success of Shenzhen is not simply the success of by the energy or by the resources or by the capital.
而是思想和观念的成功。
But the successful transformation of ideas and thinkings.
就是观念，它不能直接改变社会，但是能够改变人，人能够改变社会。
Your ideas cannot change the society immediately, but it can change people, can change any individual, and the individual can change the society.
中巴经济走廊，首先是中巴合作的一个成果，应该是它对中巴两国都是有益的。
CPEC, firstly, it's a successful platform of the 2 countries' cooperation. It should provide benefits to both countries.
但从根本上来讲，它是巴基斯坦自己的建设，是巴基斯坦自己的事情。
But actually, the CPEC, most of the parties in Pakistan, and it should benefit Pakistan more, and it needs more hard work from the Pakistan side.
需要中国的资本和技术，更需要巴基斯坦进行社会革命，建立一个好的营商环境。
It needs Chinese capital and the Chinese investment and the Chinese assistance, but most important, it needs the Pakistan need to create a good investment environment and which can lead to the social reform and the idea reform of Pakistan people.
仅有资本和技术，经济还不能完全发展，还要有一个和让资本技术能够创造价值的，能够进行创造价值的这个社会制度环境。
Only capital and technology cannot start a reform. We need an institutional environment or institutional mechanism to start this reform.
所以在中巴经济走廊建设的过程当中，巴基斯坦最需要的是一个社会制度变革。
So therefore, with the progress of the construction of CPEC, Professor Huck believes that Pakistan needs to take some kind of social reform and institutional reform.
我这里讲的社会制度变革是指的社会管理体制机制的现代化。
The social reform means that the management of the society and the mechanism to educate people and to change the custom, the comprehensive reform.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this elaborate response. Now, before we go ahead and ask Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua for his concluding remarks, I would like to thank Vishen, Zhang Liguo for their participation as observers, and I would also like to thank Mr. William Yun Wenji for his services as the interpreter in this proceeding. So on that note, I will go ahead and request Brigadier Rashid Wali Janjua for the concluding remarks of today's webinar.
Thanks, Osama. So I thank all the distinguished panelists for a very, very enlightening discourse. And as I said, at the end of this session, we stand much more educative, and some very important takeaways have been imbibed by us, courtesy the distinguished panelists who shared their wisdom with us. And one of the takeaways is the need for institutional reforms that should rub off with the people as well as the society in order to create a robust and economic and sustainable infrastructure. So this was a very important takeaways. The second was the need for security. Obviously, that's a prerequisite, and that has been amply highlighted. And some of the measures are being taken, and I'm sure Pakistan is equally cognizant of the need of security because it concerns it the most. There were some opportunities which were mentioned, like the need for enhancing the educational imprint. And the most important takeaway is that there's a need to improve the quality of our outreach by selecting the best students to go to the top ranked Chinese universities. So this is a point that needs to be taken cognizance of. And then very important point about tourism highlighted by Ambassador Enam, that there is a need for a government-sponsored infrastructure which had been very active in the past, but since quite some time it is lying dormant and needs to be reinvigorated. And tourism potential, it can become a tourism highways, China-Pakistan economic corridor, as the rail and road connectivity takes place, that tourism can start like another silkworm route. It will be a tourism route. And we are very thankful to Dr. Lau Yitao, who enlightened us on so many important dimensions of Pakistan, China's relationship, and the CPEC's significance, and the need for comprehensive institutional and social reforms which should go hand in hand with the economic development. So with these few takeaways, I once again thank all the distinguished panelists, and I hand over the floor to Chairman Board of Governors, IPRI, Ambassador Enam, for his final few words. So over to you, sir.
Thank you. I think we have had a good discourse today on Pakistan-China relations and the direction that they are taking. The positive takeaways that Brigadier Janjua has mentioned have been noted. We will continue to work on promoting greater integration between the economies of Pakistan and China. And I'm sure that with the continuing cooperation of both countries, we will overcome the obstacles that have occurred occasionally, like sporadic acts of terrorism, like certain economic difficulties regarding payments, etc., and that CPEC will prosper and will usher in a new chapter of relationship between Pakistan and China. We are very encouraged by the remarks by our Chinese colleagues that energy is one of the areas in which Gwadar Port can link South Asia with Western China, with Central Asia, and with Africa as well. And we are looking forward to the time when Gwadar Port is developed and also the pipelines are laid, which will take energy from Gwadar to Western China and on to other areas of the world. With these few words, I would like to thank all the participants and all the questioners who have asked questions and shown interest in this webinar. I thank all of you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having participated in today's webinar. Follow us over the social media for upcoming updates on the upcoming events. I thank you once again.